Welcome to the Portland Real Estate Podcast, Oregon and Southwest Washington's #1 show for real estate news and information. Without further ado, here are your hosts and a couple of guys who, as busy realtors and successful brokerage owners, know a thing or two about real estate. Steve Nassar of Premier Property Group and Joe Festolo of Soldera Properties.
Today, I'm really excited. We got Ken Perry. He's the founder of Knowledge Coop, which is teaching other lenders compliance and training. He also coaches on lender teams. He was a lender back in the day, and now he's more of a compliance trainer. But he's also a world traveler. He bounces all over the United States. He's a speaker, a coach, a panelist. He's on podcasts all the time as guests or hosts, and he stays cutting edge, knowledgeable, and relevant, which is why he's an amazing guest to have on here, because we like to bring you guys the best content. Ken, if I left anything out, I'll give you a chance to fill in some blanks. But first, got to introduce myself and my co-host. I'm Joe Festolo, and my co-host, Steve Nassar. What do you have to say, Steve?
Hey, thanks. Thanks for the intro. Excited to have you on, Ken. As we were kind of touching on before we jumped on the air here, I've known Ken for 15 years, maybe, give or take. This goes way back to a previous life when I was in the mortgage business, and he did a lot of continuing education training that I went to, and a lot of those classes were at Bullwinkle's in Wilsonville, which was just the coolest venue. We had so much fun back in the day there. This is probably going back to like 08, 07, 09, somewhere in there. And there was a big training conference room where we'd sit there for most of the day, but then we'd have breaks and we'd go out into Bullwinkle's and we'd shoot hoops and have competitions and the arcade games and it was so fun. And that was a staple in our world. So
that was such a good venue.
Let's bring it back.
I know. Well, they took out that training room. It was so perfect. And we would just go, we'd race cars on lunch break or do laser tag. And it was, I never want to create an event that I wouldn't want to attend. And so that was kind of why we did it. It's my ADHD drives me to do things for people like me. And so that was one of those. And in the mortgage industry, it's a whole lot of that. So if you can race cars and then go back and learn more, like that's just the best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they were such great classes. You did a good job. You've always done a good job of engaging and making them interesting and fun and lively and funny. And so how's that going, Ken? I mean, you're still pretty much in the same place these days. I mean, is it a new company? Did you change company names along the way? Tell us what's happened with you since then.
Yeah. And it's so funny because the compliance piece, we're in this expand the brand mode. People always reference me as a compliance guy. And mainly because I can't stop reading everything that exists around real estate and mortgage. And I just happen to love that. And so when I talk, oftentimes like, but you've got to do it right. And here's what right looks like. But the compliance side is just a portion of what we do. The Knowledge Coop is a community where people can join up and learn from the best, trainers in the industry. We try to just bring amazing content to everybody, whether it's compliance or leadership or, dude, I just stopped crying. We filmed a podcast episode this morning with a buddy of mine, Craig Davis. Our podcast is called Lessons from Last Time. And we basically break out people who've gone through really difficult times. How did they get through? How did they make it to the other side? And he brought up, he just went through cancer a couple of years ago. And so we literally just sat and cried on a podcast and talked about how do you tell your 11-year-old daughter, daddy has cancer. So, we do a lot more than talk about compliance. The podcast is really kind of a move into how do we just help the industry? Like whether you're in the industry or not, it helps to hear that others have gone through struggles and that they made it through. And then you have that hope and those skills for you to make it through. So it's why we called it Lessons from Last Time. Like what lessons can you take away? So it's been a lot. It's been basically whatever the industry needs. It just so happens that this industry needs a lot of compliance.
Well, what you do for lenders, Steve and I kind of do with the podcast and
Yeah.
Masters in Real Estate, right? Always try and be in the very front, cutting edge, and bring it to everybody so they expand their knowledge, their ethics, they do it right. And it's going to help everybody. You know, we're going to interact with one another. And the more everybody knows, the better time we're all going to have. But I'm curious about your perspective as a lender trainer, and you're very cognizant about teaching them to do things right. What do you think realtors aren't doing right?
Dude, you're going to get me not invited back for sure. It's so funny when you invited me on because I'm like, I've been in a couple conversations. There's a guy in your group that tags me every time he sees something sketchy. And then I come in as the police. And it's so funny because I don't mean to do it, but I can't stop myself. And I'm actually in my office. This is literally my office. People think it's a background. I'm in my office and I was sitting right on the other side of this wall is my car. And I was sitting in my car one time for literally 45 minutes to an hour, going back and forth on one subject with your community. And most of your community is rock stars, right? I love them. They're amazing. But then you get these people in there that just really think they know what they're talking about. And on a specific subject that I am an expert on, I can't stop bringing truth. And so I sat there, and when I came in, my whole team was like, dude, what did you just do? Because I was like sweating. I was like so angry. I'm like, I just went down this rabbit hole. But it was a RESPA conversation, and it was such a funny one. I think RESPA is something we should all be, paying attention to. And it was one where somebody said, if a buyer sends you one of their friends, that you could give them a gift for that referral. And I'm like, no, you can't. Like, it's a referral gift to anybody for a thing of value to anybody in exchange for referral is wrong. And they were like, no, it's just if you pay somebody in the industry. And so we just went back and forth on it. But like, that's just an easy one that I see probably the most. I just had a conversation before jumping on here with a loan officer who had a realtor want him to share space in their office. And so she brought him in and he's like, yeah, let me go do the math. So he does all the right math, right? What's the square footage? What would it cost to rent that? What would it cost to have a billboard out front? If it's not a real estate company, what would it cost? Like, does all his math and brings it back to her. And he's like, here it is. And she's like, dude, I just want cash. Like, hook me up. And so, I mean, we still see that garbage. And it's just insane. So I think that we still have some fraud, hiding of addendums. The thing about the industry right now is in a mortgage audit, they're starting to look at emails. And we saw a couple emails get tagged and flagged this year that were hiding a sewer. There was sewer work that needed to be done. And the loan officer emailed the realtor and said, hey, this is going to stop our deal. Can you just have him do it outside of closing and eliminate that disclosure? Well, he did it through his corporate email, which means the regulator can see it. And so we still see that happening. But yeah, the last thing, and every loan officer would hate me if I didn't bring this up. Realtors quoting interest rates is driving everybody insane. Quoting interest rates as if they have access to those interest rates, or as if they have, as if they're correct today, but they're missing all the disclosures. And a lot of times those interest rates are incorrect. Steve, you know this. I mean, as a loan officer, you're in it every day. In real estate, you're in real estate every day. And so you pay attention to the rates, but also there are requirements when you quote a rate that you have to have APR, that you have to have all these other things. And so we're seeing it a lot right now. Lending Tree will have somebody at a super low rate. A realtor will pick that up and go, hey, Facebook, guess what? Rates are now this. And it's like, well, no, that was an incorrect post on Lending Tree. You're now communicating it and killing all the loan officers by doing so. Because then they go to a loan officer with their 520 credit score, recent bankruptcy, 2 foreclosures, and they're like, I hear that the rates are this. It's like, well, that's why we have disclaimers.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me dig a little deeper on that, Ken. So you're at a listing appointment. Client goes, hey, so what are mortgage rates doing these days? I heard they dropped a little bit. As a realtor, what's your recommendation? I think being evasive is weird too. I'm just going to put that out there. If you go, oh, I can't go there because CNBC says it. Like if the guys on CNBC, the correspondents can say rates are in the high sixes. It feels like we should be able to say something like that, right? Without getting specific.
what high sixes isn't very specific, right? You're talking about a conversation. You're not talking about a Facebook post.
Yeah.
You're talking about your conversation with the borrower or the buyer. The best thing you can do. So I've got a few buddies that have just engaged with technology that posts real interest rates right now, right? I have another buddy that just launched a software company where you can go on and actually see a bunch of real rates that can actually be locked today. And it's today's rates with real circumstances. And so if you've got a mortgage company that you work with that has something like that, actually, let's check it out right now. Like, let me pull it up. And so pulling it up and going, look at this company. Oh, I just thumbs up myself. That was super cool.
That was cool.
Pulling it up and going, look at this company right here. I do a lot of business with them. And the coolest thing is they've got these daily rates that are posted. Then that's the best way. It's also a great way for you to go, let me give you his number. You can call him, or her number. You can call her. It's a great way to intro that as well. And you couldn't do that before because we didn't see a lot of people posting their rates. If you remember, like the Oregonian liars section, every Sunday they had the rates, but you had to submit them by Wednesday. Like, how accurate can you be? Where now, like, I could literally go to my buddy's website and see what rates are right now. And so just using that to bridge them to the loan officer, I think would be my recommendation.
Yeah. Good advice. Yeah. Good advice.
I think that the inaccuracies are not necessarily someone being unethical. I think a lot of people just don't know. A lot of people they get RESPA wrong all the time. There's a lot of people that don't understand antitrust. 67.3% of all statistics are just made up on the spot.
Made up. It's 67.8 now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. You're right. And it's funny, like people, if they read it on the internet and they agree with it or want to believe it, then they will promote it without verifying it. And it drives me bonkers. Like the whole attrition of how many brokers left when PMAR called for their dues in January. I heard, 40% in Oregon and 44% in Washington. And I also heard like 5%. So what is the real? Nobody knows, but
right.
Educate yourself and don't stick your foot in your mouth, especially if what you say might be against the laws. That's my word of caution.
Dude, the same thing happened on mortgage. I mean, I heard so many people like, 60% of mortgage originators are gone. I'm like, I know where the number comes from, and that's not it. And the number hasn't been released. We know who sends out the real data. And when that data hasn't come out yet, it's easy for somebody to just throw something out there. And then once you've heard it somewhere, it becomes fact, whether or not it's real. And I love how you phrased it. People want to believe something, so it becomes truth. And so that's the piece that we see, like, especially when realtors or loan officers are talking about, well, I just heard, 80% of the business left. Well, that's a cool, convenient thing to think. But if it's not truth, then you're just fooling yourself.
I think they feel pain. We all feel pain. Like, let's be clear. Sure. This is a tough market. And I want to ask you some questions about your perspective here, Ken, in a second. But we're in a tough market. We're feeling pain. I think it makes them feel better to start talking about people that left the business, because then their pain feels lessened. Like, I'm still in the business. I'm in pain, but I'm in the business. These guys left 40%, 5%, 10%, whatever, right? Your podcast, on that note, Ken, let me ask you this question. Your podcast is called What I Learned from Before.
Lessons from Last Time.
And is the general premise of that like lessons from the Great Recession that are being applied today, or last time is general?
Dude, it was supposed to be like my first episode was you went through '08. How did that go? And what tools are you using for now? And it was like my second episode. I talked to this woman, Esty Briggs, still one of my favorite episodes. And I was still getting used to podcasting, but I talked to her, and she's out of the mortgage industry now. And so we were going to talk mortgage. And then I got into the subject of her husband, who died after a 7-year battle with cancer. And she was telling me the story. And I'm like, I thought we were going to talk mortgage. And she's telling me the story. And then she says, he had gone to the hospital in 2021. And it made me go, oh, you sat in a parking lot. Like, that was my only reaction. Was I remember seeing people in parking lots of hospitals where you couldn't go in to see your loved one. And it just hit me so hard. And I was like, what's that lesson? Like, how'd you do that? And she's like, oh, I called my mom. That's the only person I got. And she started teaching me that the people around us are the ones who get us through tough times. And I'm like, okay, I need more gems. Like, where else can we learn from this? So some are pretty mortgage specific, but a lot of them are just, people who my old assistant, actually still a friend of mine, was in Columbine. Her best friend was killed and her boyfriend was shot. And I had her on just talking about that experience and what are the takeaways and what's it like to be a parent of a kid you're sending to school. So there's no boundaries to it anymore. Now it's just
drawing from adversities, basically.
Yeah.
General adversities and using them to strengthen you go through whatever you're going through, good or bad today. No, that's powerful. When did you start it, Ken, that podcast?
Last March, I think, was episode 1, and we release it every Monday.
Okay. And let me ask you a question, Ken, because I actually like asking this question, especially to my mortgage friends. And I've been surprised by the answer, even though maybe I haven't been. When you talk, and I know you talk to way more guys than I do, how do they compare this to the Great Recession?
Oh, it's so different. It's worse.
Yeah, that's what I hear too.
Yeah, because we had HARP. In the Great Recession, the mortgage originators never stopped originating.
Yeah.
You were given government programs that gave you access to still be able to do loans for people. And, granted, there wasn't any equity in America. So it definitely hurt because you couldn't we bought a house in 2010 and had no equity. We just had to hold on to our house. Like, it was just a different world.
But you were doing short sale loans.
But yeah, now you're doing short sales. Now you're doing there was still stuff.
You were doing short sales and foreclosures. Yeah, they were small loans. I remember we were selling $200,000 houses because they were foreclosures or short sales, but they were, and we were doing a lot of VA and FHA but there were loans. Now it's just the statistics are staggering. So they just officially in the last week or two announced that in 2023, the number of units sold nationally, I think it's around 4 million, maybe 4.1 million nationally, which is the lowest since 1995. So that tells you right there, less units since anything in the Great Recession. And the only reason it was 1995 is because there was 27% less houses and people back then, right? Population has increased, number of homes out there has increased. So you had to go back to a time where there was just less activity because of that. So it's staggering. And so then when you think about that, okay, so there's the lowest number of units sold last year, further back than the Great Recession. That in of itself tells you this is worse for the mortgage people than the Great Recession. But then on top of that, how much of that is cash? How much of that is, things that lenders have no part in? I mean, it is pretty bad.
Yeah. But dude, you have to ask yourself, why is the number so low? And I think the real estate and mortgage community needs to take some responsibility for that number being low. Because we focus on that number and we're like, yeah, things suck. But meanwhile, I want to move out of my house and buy a new house. I look every single day online and 0 realtors call me. Like, me and all my friends, I'm 49 years old. I just turned 49 on Christmas. Me and all my friends have our kids moving out of the house, and nobody's hitting me up to see if I'm planning on downsizing from a 4,300 square foot house to a smaller house. The answer is yes. The answer is I want to downsize and I want to move into a house with a view. And so every day I look for my house with a view, and I'm the only one doing it because the real estate community has taken a step back in my own experience and not reached out and said, dude, do you really want to do that? Because I could be looking for houses you don't have to. I want somebody to feel like there's hope for me, because I will straight up buy another house. Now, my sales price is going to be probably the same as my house I'm selling, because I'm just shifting what I want, right? I don't need all the space, and now I want a view, but I want something newer. So it's for the real estate community, this is going to be dope. Now, for the mortgage industry, I don't have a very big loan. I bought it in 2011. So you might work with me and we might do a basic trade. I think I owe $300,000 on my house. So you might only get a $300,000 loan, but it's a loan. And so hit me up. And not everybody on this call hit me up, but
careful what you wish for. We've got a big audience that's going to be calling Ken Perry after this show.
That's you just described my journey, Ken, with the whole downsize the big house, get a small one level view. I've been looking every day. You can't. It's the inventory. What's out there is not fabulous.
So go create inventory, like find some,
Yeah.
I want to move to downtown Camas. My wife and I have decided that downtown Camas will be a great spot to live. It's the best city in America as far as I'm concerned. And so if somebody was walking the streets of downtown, finding out if anybody wants to sell, and I think there are a few people doing this. So this isn't to say nobody is, but if somebody's like hitting those people up going, by the way, if I found you a buyer, what would the price be that you would want to sell for? Right? Find me that house and then come back to me and go, hey, Ken, I know you wanted to live down there. It's a little expensive right now, but the Johnsons are willing to move for this price, any chance, right? So do the work. Like you might not get the deal right away, but do the work. And then I know you're working for me and I'm never going to question your comp, right? If you are doing that, I'm not going to any other real estate agent. I'm not going to question you when the buyer's fee comes back high. Because, yeah, you worked your butt off for that. And I saw that happening. And I think that's where there is some opportunity because that's just and by the way, one guy has sent me a listing because he heard me talk at a seminar and he's like, hey, dude, this looks like the house you talked about. His name's Rich. And I was like, dude, that's close. And I had never thought about doing business with him, but I'm like, oh, like you heard me, you listened and you believe there's deals to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting time.
So with the market talk, what do you think it's going to look like this next year?
Dude, I've stopped predicting a little bit just because who knows? I think it feels a lot better right now. I know from our clients, we have a lot of mortgage clients that are getting pre-quals in. They're getting pre-approvals. They're getting, it's starting to feel better. There's more houses listed. It feels that way. I don't have all the data on it, but what we have is a very emotional situation in the real estate industry. We have people who for a while it was FOMO, right? So fear of missing out. I want to buy a house because they're going up. There's the rates are 3. I'm going to miss out if I don't get these 3% interest rates. Well, we switched to FOBO, which is fear of better options. Fear of better options is, well, I might buy it, but let's wait and see if the rates go down. So you have some of that emotional. So as soon as the rates start ticking down, it's like, oh, then people start to listen. And the rates have been that we're way off of the highs. And I actually put a Facebook post out like, hey, why isn't anybody saying this? Because I looked at my buddy's website. I'm like, wait, are those the real rates? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I thought they were still 8. And he's like, no. I'm like, what? But nobody's talking about that. And again, that goes to the mentality of the real estate community. If I believe deals will close, I'm going to post a little bit differently. And I don't think we've been celebrating some of those wins because we need to be celebrating it so that people out there say, oh, maybe it's an okay time to buy a house, right? If my favorite realtor's like, yeah, now sucks. Today was another sucky day. Then I'm like, cool, then I'll step out of this. Like, I don't need to buy a house right now. If you're not happy and you're in the business, then should probably back away. So it's a mentality thing.
There's a little bit of a buzz that people say that, hey, once the rates go down another point, then we're going to be back on. It's going to be crazy like it was. You read a lot on social media and people are starting to use that as a cliche that, we were at low 8s and they just say, hey, we get sub 6 and it's going to go bonkers, multiple offers again, all that stuff. Look, I don't know if that's true or not, but I know that the faith in the economy back in, I think it was December, when they announced that the rates will be reduced 3 times in 2024 minimum, the rates went down that day after that announcement. And then they have been going down, and you do see the activity. It seems like there's a little more activity going on.
But everybody needs to punt their idea that we're ever getting back to 21 or to 2020, 2021. Like that was a pandemic that caused the rates to drop that low. If we go into a world war, then chances are we're going to see those rates again. Absent a world war, we should stop saying we're going to get crazy.
But then you also have a world war. So
I know, like this is not a reality. The reality is we're going to go back to a normal market. But nobody should ever say it's going to be gangbusters like 21. No. If it is, we're all screwed because that means the world is falling apart.
Yeah. And I would even say if we could all go back in time, and I don't think now in hindsight, we wanted 21. What happened in 21? I mean, we don't ever want that again, because
Right.
what it does when rates go that low, yeah, you benefit for the 2 years that they're that low. But we might pay the price for that for 5, 8 years, because those rates are still there and they're going to be there for a long time. I know for a fact, guys, 20 years from now, I'm going to be going to a listing appointment. Someone's going to be like, yeah, we still got that 2.75 rate, right? They're going to be out there for a long time. And I'm not saying, at every year that goes by, there'll be less of them, and time will eventually, declog that, but not entirely, not at least for 30 years when those loans actually truly come to fruition. I did hear an interesting line the other day I was going to mention. Said the best marketing for rates in the 6s is when we had rates in the 8s, right? That is a benefit that we are enjoying, right? When rates were first in the 6s, 6, 7, 8 months ago, people were like, oh, this is high. I remember they were just in the 5s or 4s. Well, then they go to the 8s, and now they're back in the 6s, and they look a lot better. So that is a benefit that we're enjoying now.
Yeah, every mark down, like we get into the 5s, and it is people starting to go, okay, well, cool, I could do that. I think I have 3 on my loan. But if you take 3 to 5 and look at the payment difference versus the house that I want, and I'm going to probably downsize a little. So, I mean, it might still make sense. The rate doesn't dictate necessarily what people are going to do. It's just what makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kirk Faulkner just wrote a comment that I totally agree with. Everything kind of goes off the table during a campaign year, and it's predictable that they can artificially lower the rates because that's the best thing for the current POTUS to maybe get reelected again, is giving the illusion that we're in a healthy economy and things are going well. And so the rates usually are lower during election year. And I've seen that year after every election.
It's historic. Yeah.
I heard something interesting today on CNBC that actually was that made me think. I don't necessarily agree that the Fed is going to try to help one candidate or another. But and there are people, and I get there's people that do think that. But what I did hear today that was fascinating is, what if the Fed goes out of their way to show that they're not helping a candidate? In other words, what if because they have statistics that, they have a line and statistics on what's the likelihood that there'll be a Fed drop in March, what's the likelihood of June. This person was opining that maybe they don't want to start dropping in June because it is so close to the election. So maybe they do move it forward for that reason, So it is interesting. In other words, it's not just about helping the election. There could be actions to go out of the way to show they're not helping the election, from a timing standpoint. So it is going to be interesting regardless of what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Historically, they do stay. There's not usually a lot of spikes during election years. So I would anticipate very little this year. From the experts I know, all I'm hearing is steady lowering, getting back to something reasonable. So, and by the way, I follow Matt Graham. If anybody is interested in the right people to listen to, Matt Graham is one of the smartest dudes in the mortgage industry. You'll see him on CNBC, and he's just a freaking genius. And he lives in Hillsborough, so local guy.
Awesome.
That's cool. Yeah.
All right. We haven't really scraped the surface yet on the best of masters. There were 2 topics, Ken, and maybe you just want to do a little tiny smidgen on it. The NAR lawsuit, you think is maybe going to change the landscape of real estate. Where there's chaos, there's opportunity. Where there's opportunity, there's always somebody that wants to cut it a little lower and make it up in volume versus make it up in getting, competitive rates according to the market. You got to be careful what you say with antitrust. But You had a theory about the NAR lawsuit and what you think might be popping up in the future. You want to give us your thoughts on that?
I will. And I'll give you a lot of background to this too, so that you're not just getting a statement, you're getting some thinking and some analysis behind it. So let me just start by saying the NAR is, this isn't opinion. They're one of the strongest lobbies in the entire, United States. They're an absolute powerhouse. And for the real estate community to be running like they have for as long as they have has been largely due to NAR's power and to the funding that NAR gets to be able to lobby the way that they do, to be able to have those connections the way that they do. And so it's been a very long time that realtors have been in a really sweet spot, largely due to a really strong powerhouse of an advocate on the Hill. That being said, any sort of challenge to that has usually come and gone. And this is the first one that I've noticed really stick, because it goes to what consumers are paying and what they know they're paying or don't know that they're paying. Right. So it's not about necessarily like a lot of the regulatory things like, well, this is unfair, and so we're going to make a change to this, right? A lot of times a regulator will come along, LO comp happens, loan originator compensation. The regulator goes, hey, we don't think you should be able to change your comp based on per deal. And they make a rule change that actually affects the compensation of loan officers. That's not what this is, right? This is consumers being harmed is the way it's framed. And therefore, it's going to be different than a regulator, right? The regulators aren't touching the real estate community. Versus what mortgage faces, real estate community doesn't face nearly as much of scrutiny by a regulator. So this is more a consumer's being harmed. And so that's kind of the framework for it. Now, if you back away and look at this logically and take off your real estate or mortgage hat and you look at it, you go, okay, if I want to buy a house tomorrow, what do I pay to buy a house? What's my percentage that I pay? We all know there's kind of a percentage we know people have been paying, and we'll avoid antitrust by not talking about that. But like we know, right? So if I was going to go buy a house tomorrow, I would think about, cool, who pays my real estate person, right? And so we look at it and my fee is being paid for by the seller who's being told, yeah, we need to do this in order to get a real estate agent to show this house. Let's get this comp built so that they can be paid out of the sale of that home. And we all for years have known when I sell my house, I need to pay for my seller's agent. I need to put some money up there for my buyer's agent. That's how we get the house sold, right? And so a lot of FSBO companies, came and went. We've seen them. They've been very cut rate, but it feels cut rate when you go in there. It's like, the carpet is shag still, and it's like, but I can help you. You just haven't gotten the quality out of that. Partly because technology wasn't what it is today. And so I think about what would I pay as a buyer's agent. Right now it's zero. Cool. I'll use a buyer's agent because it's zero, right? Not thinking about the fact that it isn't zero. It's coming out of the sales price. And so I don't care.
Which is built into the price of the home.
Seller's paying it. Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so in my mind as a buyer, I don't care. Right. So I'll grab a buyer's agent. Hey, let's go find me a house. The buyer's agent does that work. What this has done is cause people to go, what is it they do? Like, what does a buyer's agent do for me? And I know a buyer's agent does quite a bit, right? I mean, I had a buyer's agent when we bought our house. It was a short sale. We made the offer and this is 2010, made the offer on Thanksgiving and closed right before Easter. So I know my realtor was in it every single day. My realtor was the kind that he would crawl through the crawl spaces when we walked into a house. Like, let me go look. And he would just like dive in. And I'm like, you do that, dude. That's awesome. And he would give me the analysis on everything. And I know that dude earned that money, but I also didn't have to pay him. And so now it's like, well, what do I get out of this scenario? And if I was looking at it on a house, let's say I buy $1 million house. And if I was to be told that I have to pay $30,000 for $1 million house, just human emotion and what I'm willing to do, I'm going to now ask my buyer's agent what they're doing for that 30 grand. Right. And so I'm going to start asking questions. So all it is a realtor has to be able to tell me what their worth is as a buyer's agent. And if you can do that, that's awesome. And if you can't do that, then you should be very concerned. And so what we're seeing is now the mortgage community, and I predicted this when you and I talked last year, I was in New Orleans, I think when we first had our conversation, and I was saying there will be mortgage companies that go, why don't we just take over the buyer's agent side? And we're already seeing, like, from our perspective, with as many mortgage companies as we train, we are now having a lot of requests for pre-licensing education for realtors, where they're starting to move them over to the mortgage side. Because if I could do the loan on that property, then I don't need to make as much as a buyer's agent. What if we had a buyer's agent that was a qualified, talented, gifted, agent? What if we had that person just work for the mortgage company? And now the mortgage company runs a buyer side where they control the loan and they control the purchase. And it's happening. Like, I can't even tell you how many calls I get. Weekly, I get calls. Hey, we've got 10 realtors we're hiring. We need you to train them on loans. Because we're seeing them shift over to the mortgage side. So it's going to be interesting, but that is already occurring.
Mm-hmm.
And they work. And then you also mentioned that they sometimes might work on an a la carte sort of, hey, if you buy $1 million house, and sort of the competitive rate today, that would be, a commission for one side would be either, 22,500 to 30,000 is sort of what we see that seems to be competitive. But someone might say, hey, look, I'll show you the house. I'll write an offer. We'll negotiate an inspection thing for X, like a fifth of that, $5,000, 7,500, 10 grand, whatever. And people, who don't see the value in realtors are like, well, hey, look, if being completely transparent with all parties, including buyers, and if the buyers are on the hook, we see BACs being $0 or $1. I mean, we're starting to see that. So if the seller isn't agreeing to do it and the buyer's going to do it, it's like, well, I want this guy over here who is just going to do these three things and get paid a fifth of what this other one was. And you think that's going to be a real thing? I didn't know that they were going to be going over to the lender side. I just thought it would spur maybe a new company of, hey, here's all of our people, use them to write offers because we got a flat fee for services.
Well, but the problem with that is you still have the shag carpet, right? So if it goes to the mortgage side, the mortgage company makes money on mortgages, right? They make money on loans. All they want is the loan because that's the only way they currently get paid. If you can take the real estate side as a buyer or as a buyer's agent goes over to the mortgage space, all you need to do is the loan. Like, you don't have to make money. It's like when I go speak, before I had a membership program that we sell, I would go speak and charge a speaking fee. And then I'd speak next to somebody that doesn't need a speaking fee because they're going to get so many people at the back of the room buying their book that they're going to make the money on the books, right? Well, it's the same thing. In a mortgage industry, all we want is the mortgage deal, right? And by the way, I haven't done a loan since 99. So I speak as the mortgage industry sometimes by accident. The mortgage industry doesn't need to know or doesn't need to make the money off real estate. So they could literally charge $2,000 on a deal and their profit comes in from the mortgage side. So if they can secure more deals and do more mortgages, what if they end up doing all the mortgages because they're the ones that have this buyer's deal that they can do? And the TikTok video writes itself, doesn't it? Like, here's what the realtors don't want you to know. Like, you're paying them this much money when you could actually just pay this much money. Come to ABC Mortgage where we take care of the real estate side for $1,000. Like, I mean, how do you fight that? Like, that's where the reaction to this from the real estate community needs to be, how do we fight that? Like, what does that mean for us? Right. And we just launched an AI product. So now you can search guidelines using our AI because we saw AI pop up and we're like, okay, that could be a problem. So let's get in front of it. And you can't look at challenges like this and be like, well, great, we're all dead now. Cool. Most of the industry thinks that, but the smart ones go, they'll be dead now. What's the story where I come out on top? Let's write that story and then let's start working on that campaign. And that's where the real estate industry really needs to do that. Like, document it. What is it you do and for who and why?
And this is sort of, you see it kind of running rampant and building steam. I mean, we haven't seen too much of it. I haven't in Washington or Oregon, but you bounce all over the place. And so it's prevalent in other areas that's the way they're moving.
Yeah. And you're not seeing a lot because people still need to pass a test. You know, the NMLS test is not easy for these people to pass. So they're in pre-licensing classes right now. They're loading up. And you also haven't seen a lot because mortgage origination companies are also a little concerned about doing this. Because how do you do this and not piss off the seller's agents? Like, how do you not anger the real estate community by taking the buyer's side? And so it's a lot of the conversation in boardrooms are, yes, this makes sense. Yes, we will do it. How do we do it and keep rolling and keep our referrals coming in from our listing agents? So you can't really do this in a company that's so big that your top 3 loan officers have, they each have 5 of the top real estate agents in our community. And they're looking at the company going, are you killing me? Like right now, you're killing me because you're going to take my business from these realtors. They're going to hate me. So right now it's in strategy mode. It's in prep mode. It's on its way up.
It also seems, I mean, you can't guarantee the mortgage to the mortgage company. So there is a scenario where that buyer's agent runs around and does get paid $2,000 and they get nothing else. They still shop the mortgage and go with somebody else. I mean, there's no signed agreement that could guarantee the mortgage.
Yeah, no guarantees, but it's sort of like, you have a client that maybe wants to sell, maybe wants to rent, and they said, let's rent this for 2 years, and you refer them to a property manager. And if that property manager finds out that, hey, the guy doesn't want to rent anymore, their job, out of respect and courtesy, you brought it to them. They're going to say, hey, Steve, hey, Joe, this person wants to sell. It goes back to you. They're not going to recommend some other broker. And so a little bit stepping on your own air hose if all you want to do is the loans, but to get the loans, you're taking it away from your referral partners. You're taking away their job to get these loans, which is all you care about. No one's going to send you loans. I mean,
right.
In theory,
unless they want you to send them your listings. So it spins the paradigm a little bit, doesn't it? So right now I really want these realtors who talk to the borrower first to be able to send me that borrower so I can get them a loan. If they do this right, they can actually take the buyer side and now they go, hey, I have this huge database of people. When they go to sell their houses, I'm successful in this industry enough to need to send them over to a listing agent because we won't touch listing agents. And then you've created that flip a little bit where now it's like, do you want to do business with me? Because I've got this huge database of people that go to me because we're so good, but we also close for so little. But I want to introduce you to them when they want to sell. I mean, does that change? And I don't know. If they're successful, then yeah, it probably does. But it's not just, you have to remember the whole game is changing. I was just on Zillow yesterday. They rolled out in January. So that's this month still.
Their AI.
They rolled out the AI. And so you're not just fighting against people trying to get in, you're fighting against companies using technology to try and replace. And now you can tell AI, the beauty of AI is it's a conversation. And that's the difference between AI and search, right? When you're using search, you can search guidelines, but AI is just going to answer your question. Now you don't have to search. And so same thing with their new buyer's agent tool or buyer tool. I can go on to Zillow and be like, by the way, if you see something like this come up, let me know. Like, I kind of like this, I kind of like that. And then it's going to feed you, theoretically, it's going to feed you, dude, you like this? Check this out, right? And I promise you, a computer's better at that than a lot of people, humans can be, right? And so then it's going to feed me that. I don't have to go search because it's going to be like, what about this? Well, why didn't you like it? Well, I hated it because it's a 2-car garage. I won't buy another house with a 2-car garage. And so that's like a non-starter for me. And so I'm going to be like, dude, if you send me one more 2-car garage, I'm going to stop using you. Oh, my bad. And it's going to ship you 3-car garages. Like that, it's here. Like that exists today. They just made a huge announcement in January that they've got it. And it is going to change the game a little bit too. So again, it's going back to what do I do? Like, what is an agent? What is my value to you? If searching for the house isn't necessarily my highest and best for you right now, then what is it? Is it the negotiation? Is it I've been around long enough to know that some of these houses are paint and carpet. Like we all have seen those, right? Like, it just got listed, but it got bought 3 months ago and it was a hellhole with a bunch of mold and and they just threw some carpet and painted over the mold, and now they're selling it and it looks super sexy. Well, a real estate professional knows that, and a real estate professional is going to go, I provide that value. Like I'm tracking the history of the home. And so there's things that, it's just an example, but there's things that real estate professionals can look at and go, hey, here's my value. And by the way, mortgage people aren't the best. There's only one company with the best rate on any given day, right? So mortgage people need to be able to say, well, yeah, but with me, here's what you get. And I think that's the beauty of this, is it's causing people to have to go back and define their value. I know my value and I can tell you why we're expensive, right? But I can tell you why. I can put a list together. You talked about that. Steve, you said, you went to this seminar, you raced cars, you laughed, like we had a killer lunch. I can tell you why we're better, right? But a lot of mortgage people can't do that. And so the question becomes, how fast can you come up with that list?
Then it becomes cost.
Right.
In the absence of being able to explain your value, it becomes about fee, the lowest. And then it's a race to the bottom.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. I think it's all encompassing. I mean, pretty much those investors that, put spray paint on a turd or whatever you call it, lipstick on a pig. Everybody knows shoddy craftsmanship. I mean, they don't even try and do a good job about it. They just slop it all over the place. But kind of against popular belief and public belief, our real job is to talk buyers out of buying a house. Pretty easy to sell them a house. It's got a big porch and a swinging bench. And it's like, oh my gosh, American dream. They want it. And it's like, well, let's see how this sewer line is doing. And let's see if it has lead-based paint and asbestos. And let's check the foundation. This house is 100 years old. There's so much beyond negotiations, but just identifying what this person's buying. Is it the money pit? And are they buying it just because it's cute? Or is this something that's going to be a money pit for the next, 5 years? And I think every broker out there needs to find what their value is, and not only for the seller, but now also for the buyers.
That story has to be told. That's how you do it. You tell that story, right? You tell the story about the one agent in town, and you wouldn't use their name, but there might be an agent in town that every single deal they overprice because their whole scam is overprice it and get a sucker. They know that, tell the story. Why not AI? You need to explain that to me. Why not AI? And the answer, because I'm human, doesn't win the day, right? I mean, look at how many things. I think I told you this the other day, Joe. When Facebook came out for the first time, I did a seminar and I'm like, this is a game changer. You will win business on Facebook. You will build relationships on Facebook. You will connect with your audience on Facebook. And people in the audience were like, Ken, nobody will ever put pictures of their family into a public environment where people can see it. We're so private. We'll never post a meal that we're eating. We'll never post. And I'm like, you guys, pay attention. Yes, they will. You can't say no. You have to say, what if they do? What does that mean for me? How does that change my game? You could build an entire training class with me, with my face and my voice. You can AI an entire training class that's probably going to be more research than me because AI knows more than I do. And you can do that. So then what does that mean for me? Where do I exist? And I have to ask myself that question every single day. So I can't be yeah, but that's not me. Okay. Right. It's still awesome.
We're going to have AI Ken on the podcast next month.
Dude, go listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. Joe Rogan has a whole AI channel where he doesn't do any of the podcasts. It's AI Joe interviewing AI other people, and they're all AI. And they sound exactly like real podcasts.
That's scary. That's getting to the scary. There's
I know.
Fake news floating around and people taking it literally. And
you can't search Taylor Swift right now on X, which is formerly Twitter, because there's naughty pictures of AI of her. And so there was so many that they had to just make it so you can't search for her at all. So it's coming. I mean, they call that deep, what do they call it?
Deep fakes.
Deep fakes. Yeah.
Yep. And deep fakes were created by the porn industry. That was literally the first group to create deep fakes. Was they would put Jennifer Aniston's face on a porn star during a scene, and that was the first deep fake. And now you're seeing Obama videos that aren't really Obama. You're seeing Biden videos that aren't really Biden. Like they're legit.
Right.
It's a different world.
Yeah, that's scary stuff. That's scary stuff, especially in an election year, right? Where there, in fact,
Yeah.
when I mean, there was a whole 60 minutes about this, and I mean, the what they're saying is, I mean, all of us as consumers and as the audience, we need to be skeptical of anything. It's that saying, if it's too good to be true, then it's probably not true. If it's so crazy that it doesn't seem true, it probably is not moving forward, right? Or if it's so bizarre.
And the cliche of, believe nothing that you hear and half of what you see, right? Half of what you see can be fooled like magic. The guy didn't really make the ball disappear, or the rabbit out of the hat. I mean, it's magic. There's tricks, but now it's also believe 0% of what you see, because the AI videos out there are, you can create one in your own image and your voice, and it will make the voice and your mouth work perfectly on whatever topic, because it has the power of Google and Wikipedia. It's just, I don't love that. I see, to me, that's really quite scary. I do think AI has a value. Like if I'm in my car and I put on a playlist and the playlist ends and it's like, well, hey, Joe, you like Van Morrison, and so you probably like Cat Stevens and Rolling Stones, and I mean that works out great. But when you portray someone, and there's people out there that don't know that some of this stuff out there is fake. They're just listening to it.
You're proving the point we've been talking about this whole time, right? What is it a realtor can bring? It's trust, right? I don't trust Jack anymore. I got a text the other day, hey, want to grab breakfast? And I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but like I'm an adventure seeker. And so I go, yeah, let's do it. Okay. I don't even know what this is. And this person texts back right on to 7:30 work. And I look at my watch. I'm like, yeah, I should be ready by then. Yeah, that works. Where do you want to go? And then I get this picture of some woman I've never met before. And she's like, here's me. And I'm like, oh, no. And I go, sorry, you have the wrong number. She's like, oh, sorry, you seem nice. I'm sure you guys have received these texts. And I'm like, I don't trust text messages. I don't trust anything or anybody anymore. And so I'm looking for somebody I can trust. And that's where a real estate professional can be like, by the way, stuff's crazy out there. I'm your person. You can trust me. And let me just double down on that and then double down again. Like it's relationship, it's trust. It's no matter what goes on out there, your home buying experience, I got you. And that's the piece that's valuable to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hey, let's move on. New York style, Joe, as you like to call it. Let's jump into a couple topics so we keep things moving forward here. Hey, I did want to talk about this one that had to do with the showing that went long. It's probably the hottest topic that we had in the last few months on Masters. And it's a topic that hasn't come up before that I remember. Allison Opold, I may be saying her last name wrong. I apologize if I am. So she had a client, she had a listing, and somebody set up a showing through, I believe it was Showing Time. It was a 30-minute request, which I guess allows for 1 hour, if I understand correctly here. And apparently the sellers reached out about an hour and a half later and said, hey, is there a different showing happening? Because someone's still in my house. And she did, she shared the screenshots of the text messages. And she said, are you still at the home? To the agent that was at the home. And they said, yes, we are just leaving. She said, you've been there for an hour and a half. And the agent said, okay, I'm sorry. They were looking at everything 2 and 3 times, trying to get all the boxes checked. Our apologies. Hopefully we're not in the way of somebody else, but we're leaving now. She then said, this is an occupied home. You scheduled a 30-minute appointment and the max allowable time is 1 hour. My clients were waiting to get back in. And then the agent said, sorry, I just got caught up trying to help them and lost track of time. It then showed feedback through Showing Time where the agent who had shown it got a little snarky and aggressive and saying, basically, my clients are passing on the house because you were so rude to us, on and on. It was a pretty polarizing post. There was about 90 comments, and people kind of fell into 2 different camps. one camp, and I actually happened to be in this one camp, and there was one funny comment. I'm on the camp that, man, if there's an hour and a half showing, we're leaving you alone. That's a good showing.
Mm-hmm. This is going to bring in a contract.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty rare that hour and a half showings don't go mean something good. So I'm in that camp, and I would have been more gentle possibly in just saying, hey, my sellers are wanting to get in there. How much longer do you think it would be? The other camp was like along her lines, which was, hey, this is rude. You've overstayed your welcome. One of the funny posts was, they said, if a showing happens and it lasts that long, I'm bringing dinner. I'm going to call and offer to bring them dinner so that make them comfortable there in the house. What did you think about it, guys?
I'm not a professional, but I was like, dude, if I'm that listing agent, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that you're spending that much time. This must be something they're super interested in. And I think that's gold, because I take a lot of time when I look at houses.
Yeah, I agree.
So the third camp is, I think they're both wrong. And I'm with you, Steve, because I think someone spends a long time in the house. Great. That's good. But today with technology, if you go beyond your half hour, you can text, you can call, you can email, you could reschedule another half hour. I mean, hell, you just got to walk out to the sign and see the person's number or look on a flyer. It's very, very easy to get in touch with people. And they know it's an owner-occupied home. It's clear to everybody. So the person showing it should have been sensitive that, the person is out wandering around the Safeway waiting for this to be done to come home. They should have, but you can't change history. So I think this broker, the listing broker, came in hot. And since you can't change history, if you look at the text, he's like, gosh, I'm so sorry. They just want to look at everything 2 and 3 times, and they're just processing and
checking every box.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And it kept going back to, well, you're there for an hour and a half. And it's like, you can't change that. Like, move on. So she came in a little hot. This person could have, notified, we're staying overtime. I'm so sorry. But when the people decided not to buy the house, and then the guy jumps back in and says, you know what, we're moving on. This is bad energy. And, you're going to be a bear to deal with. So we don't even want to do it. That's not the reason. They discounted the house, didn't buy it for whatever reason. But now that you don't have a potential selling agent who is sensitive to kissing the rear end of the listing agent, now that that's off the table, it's like, we probably could have put it together, but you were kind of a bitch. So we just decided not to. And that was basically his message. And I don't believe any of it. They're not going to not buy it because of that experience.
Right.
So, give a little bit of grace to the person just trying to do their job. And that guy could have really notified her. And it's all about correspondence. When there's a gap in correspondence, the wheels fall off. And that's exactly what happened.
Well, my question too would be, was there a pre-message that we missed? Like, if the listing agent said, hey, yeah, you can see it, but the deal is they've got some big plans tonight, they're having friends over, can you make this a 30-minute showing? And if they like it, let's schedule you for a longer showing later. Was there anything like that? Because if we're going to have a sensitive seller, then it's better that we we get in front of that problem early. And we don't have that information, but that would be another interesting fact to get.
Yeah.
Some of this comes down to the role of showing time, though. Okay. Let me ask you a question, Joe. So say 5 years ago or 10 years ago, before showing time, I called Joe up. I'm going, hey, Joe, I see your listing on 123 Main Street. Can my buyers get in there at 4:00? Okay. We go there at 4:00. You go, yeah, hey, no problem. We go there at 4:00. You never told me the end time, because that didn't used to be a thing, right? There was never like, you've got 4 to 5, right? Unless there was a back-to-back showings. But that was not the case here, by the way. There was not another showing after this. In the old days, you might have said, oh, yeah, you go in at 4:00, Steve, but there's a 5:00 showing. And usually in those days, Joe, I would still be in the house and there would be a knock on the door and the 5:00 would be there. And we go, oh, almost done. Give me 2 more minutes. We're just wrapping up, right? That was a couple comments I saw in this thread is showing time has come into our world. And it has created this calendar slot because that's what its job is as technology. But is that something that we have to abide by, even though we didn't used to, right? There was no one knocking on the door. There was no one. The listing agent clearly is attributing showing times blocking time period as something gospel. But do we all, as buyer's agents, do we? Because we didn't before showing time. So that it's a deeper conversation in that regards. Have we changed our status of how we view showing lengths because showing time as technology has to have end periods? Does that make sense?
Well, it does. And I don't know if you guys remember, but sort of pre-COVID, it wasn't a super big deal if there were two showings at the same time. And it wasn't as organized with showing time and aligned showings. You just, hey, is this available? I'm going to go show it later today. And it's like, okay, or if it's owner occupied, they need a time. But there has to be a little bit of grace. If you're showing 5 houses and they're located in a star pattern from each other, and you have to predict, okay, we go into this house, how long are they going to spend there? Then we got to lock up, load up, commute, and get over there. It's very easy to get off your timeline, especially it depends on your buyers. Are they quick or do they take forever? And the only way you will hit every timeline is if you extra pad, I'm going to show this house at 1 and I'm going to show this house at 2:30 and I'm going to show this house at 4. That's the only way you'll show up exactly on time. Otherwise, you might be late. But we would show a property and someone's like, oh, yeah, we saw the house. It's all yours. Here's the key. We're going to go in the backyard, or we're going downstairs. It wasn't really necessarily a big deal. But I understand, especially for owner occupied, they need to know when they can come back. And then also for vacant properties that are super, super popular and people who want to have private showings that don't overlap, we kind of have to now be sensitive to that time slot. Otherwise, you're going to be there at someone else's time slot. And if they're not comfortable with it, then the wheels fall off on that too. So it is much different than what we're used to. But you got to give a little bit of grace. I mean, there's traffic, there's unforeseen circumstances. People stay way too long. You show up late. I mean, there's been I've encountered my fair share of mean people where I show up late. I say, I'm so sorry, I'm late. The realtor unlocks the door, lets their buyers in, takes the key, and then locks it. And it's just like everybody's locked out. And, I try not to do that, but gosh, it changes. And I do like it insofar as it's a little more organized. It starts here, ends here. But look, this is life, right? Are you going to show up right at 9 a.m. and leave right at 9:30? Probably not.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, and don't get me wrong, showing time, aligned, they're here to stay. They're great technology. They've made our lives so much easier. The underlying question that I was asking is, does the showing have to end when that time slot ended if no one's behind you? And that was, the general dialogue through this. And yes, I think we have a couple comments. Lead with love. Great dialogue. I mean, just some basic communication could have happened without the nastiness is kind of the
tone is everything there.
Absolutely. And even if the deal had happened, I mean, just it's best to we all interact with each other. Let's leave good energy and let's make our jobs as enjoyable as possible, because there's enough challenges and headaches right now and in general as it is. Speaking of showing time, Matt Clays had another comment about a showing request via Align Showings, approved it, and they said another agent was going to be showing. The person requesting the appointment is not a member of RMLS or a licensed agent in the state. That's weird. Don't we need to be in order to use the showing tools? What do you think on that one, Joe?
So I dug into it because I wanted to know that for myself. Matt is really good about learning and staying current. What happened was it was someone's, buyer's agent assistant making the appointment for the team lead. And so they weren't actually showing the property. They were making the appointment for their boss, who was going to go out and show it. I don't have a problem with that, but to get rid of the mystery, just log in with that person's login. And then you see a licensed person and you know who's coming. And then they will forever be on the text thread if anything changes. So I guess RMLS said it's okay that a non-licensed person could do the booking of it. But that's happened to me in the past. And someone says, hey, I'm actually booking for this person who is a licensed broker. So it didn't sound like that happened when Matt saw it.
Is there a space for that? Can you go in and say it's Ken Perry, but I'm booking it for this agent?
Yeah.
If the tech allows for it, then that's the mistake that was made by the person booking it. It's just a process mistake.
Yeah, there's a note section and such.
A lot of posts about the ice storm. Man, that was a bad one. That was a bad one. You know, what's funny is it literally froze our real estate market for 10 days. It's what's crazy about that storm is there was no fun in that storm. I mean, we've had big snowstorms in the past, and you know, the first few days are fun, and there's snowmen and snow angels. There was no fun in this one. This was the no fun snow zone, right? Like it was just it started as a Arctic blizzard, North Pole, you know, high winds, freezing rain, ice everywhere. And then it just got worse from there, right? Trees down, power out. I have a couple clients, 7 days, no power. But it really, really, I mean, and I have 3 listings that had pipes burst. 2 of them were withdrawn right now. $2.7 million house in Sherwood on acreage is withdrawn for probably 2 months, and all new floors, all new. I mean, it was just bad. I have another condo, something similar. It'd probably be off for several months. And I'm not alone. There's trees in houses, pictures on Masters.
Well, not just that, but like, dude, I live at the bottom of a hill where if it's going to snow, we all park our cars up at the top of the hill. And to get out of my hill, I had to wear snowshoes. When I drove home, I parked at the top of the hill. My daughter walked up the hill in snowshoes to bring me snowshoes so we could both walk down the hill. If I had my house listed and somebody was driving by, they'd be like, no way I'm living here. Look what has to be done in the ice. Like, it would have turned everybody away from my house. Whereas if it's in the summer, like, you wouldn't even think about that. But that becomes a reason you're not going to make an offer if you're seeing it during that time.
Yeah, that storm, I mean, nobody's looking at anything. They're hardly, I mean, outside of maybe online, you know, searches. But yeah, transactions just freeze up and lock up during that stretch. I have one client, we're getting his house ready to go on the market. He lives in Forest Heights. He's a doctor at St. Vincent's. He had to do something similar, Ken. I was just there last week, and he was telling me the nightmare that he lived through. He had to park his house way up on Skyline above Forest Heights, and he put those little, you know, the chains for your shoes. What are those things called?
Yeah.
There's a name for them.
Yak tracks.
Yak tracks, yeah. He had to put yak tracks on his shoes, and he would hike up Forest Heights all the way to his car and then drive to the hospital. Because you think about it, I mean, a lot of us, when those storms hit, we get to just stay home and it's a snow day, but doctors have to get to the hospital. So it was a crazy one.
Well, dude, we were flying out the next day, and I had only had my Mini Cooper at the top of the hill. My wife's SUV that would be good in that was in our garage. There were 3 cars crashed at the bottom of our hill, just small residential community. And so I had to walk with 2 suitcases because we were flying to Hawaii. So I walked 2 suitcases up the hill, put them in the car, got my wife in the car, dropped her off at the hotel by the airport to fly out the next day, went back and got my daughter, walked down, brought her the snowshoes, went back up, put her in the car, and then drove to the airport. It was insane. Like, it's a big difference.
Yeah. I hope to God we have nothing like that again this year. I have no patience or tolerance for any more weather events. Okay. Well, I think we had a great show. Ken, so good to see you again and get you on here. And I know you've got a busy day with other podcasts.
I've got a webinar in like an hour and 20 minutes. I'm on it, or maybe I don't even know. I have to find out. Yeah, I'm going back on camera really fast.
Yeah, awesome. Joe, any final words before we let everyone go?
Nope. Just thanks for your time. It's, there's a lot of inside of your brain. And I think it's obvious that you speak a lot and you travel a lot and you stay current. So thanks for sharing all that today. And thank you. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Portland Real Estate Podcast, Oregon and Washington's #1 show for cutting-edge real estate discussions. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to the members of Masters in Real Estate, a private and exclusive Facebook group, and the #1 source for all real estate topics. Thanks for being there, gang. I love you. Finally, I want to thank our faithful listeners. Without an audience, we're just two guys talking to each other. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so the new episodes automatically come to you. Make it great.